Some lawyers charge $1,500 an hour just to read emails, while others chase ambulances hoping for their next quick payday. Some help multi-billion-dollar companies avoid almost all their taxes, while others defend murderers, sex offenders, and war criminals. What do they all have in common? At the end of the day, they all get paid. And some get insanely rich, while others are still trying to pay off their student debt at 50. So what separates the rich from the broke? What different types of lawyers are there? And what do they even do all day? I'm going to answer all of these and more in this video. Let's go. These are the guys you call when you've been arrested and need saving from some serious trouble. We're talking murder charges, fraud, drug trafficking, and the occasional, oops, I didn't mean to commit insider trading. So what do they actually do? Most people probably picture criminal lawyers arguing in courtrooms all day, delivering dramatic speeches like something out of Suits. The reality is, courtroom appearances are only part of the job. The real work happens behind the scenes, researching case law, reviewing police reports, cross-examining witnesses, and filing endless motions to get evidence thrown out. And then there's damage control. A huge part of the job is managing clients who are either terrified, completely delusional, or flat out lying about what happened. Remember, you're dealing with people who are facing years or decades of jail time. Whether or not they're innocent, your clients are probably shitting themselves. So what are criminal lawyers trying to do in their cases? They're not actually trying to prove their client's innocence per se. Their job is to create doubt. It's the job of the prosecution to prove guilt. It's not the job of the defense to prove innocence. So the strategies and tactics involved in criminal law have a lot to do with creative ways to poke holes in the prosecutor's argument. You've got some criminal defense lawyers making millions representing high-earning individuals, while you've got some public defenders who take on cases for people who can't afford a lawyer. The high-profile lawyers might charge $2,000 an hour, while the public defender might make something like $300 per case. The difference? Simple. Who they represent. Represent some Wall Street exec in his insider trading and fraud trial, you'll likely pull millions. Represent some idiot drug dealer who can barely pay his rent, you'll be chasing that money till kingdom come. Let's talk about one of the most famous criminal cases in history. It's 1994, and former NFL star O.J. Simpson has just been charged with the double murder of his ex-wife Nicole Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman. The evidence? His blood was found at the crime scene. A glove, covered in blood, was found on his property. He had a history of domestic violence against Nicole, and of course he led the most famous police chase ever in a white Ford Bronco. I mean, even ChatGPT says he's guilty. And yet his lawyers managed to turn an open-shut case into one of the biggest legal upsets of all time. How'd they do it? They created doubt. They attacked the LAPD's credibility by insinuating that because of one of the detectives' history of racism, the evidence could have been planted by racist cops. And second, the famous if it doesn't fit, you must acquit moment. The glove, covered in blood, didn't seem to fit OJ's hand. That's all they had to do. Poke some holes into the prosecution's case, and it was game over. So how much did the Dream Team make for this case? Around $5 million. Forget everything you've seen in Suits. Corporate lawyers don't spend their days dramatically objecting in courtrooms. In fact, most of them barely ever see a judge. Instead, they're busy in high-rise offices, buried under paperwork, making sure billion-dollar companies stay out of legal trouble. They're the guys who make sure companies like Apple, Amazon, and Google legally pay almost nothing in taxes, or make sure CEOs can fire thousands of employees without getting sued into oblivion. So what do corporate lawyers actually do? 4 main responsibilities: drafting and negotiating contracts, regulatory compliance, mergers and acquisitions, and lawsuit prevention. Now, the fun stuff. How much do they make? In New York City, the average salary for a corporate lawyer seems to be somewhere around $150,000 to $250,000. The more you climb the ladder, and the more prestigious the law firm, the more money you'll make. If you stick around long enough to make partner, which would probably take at least a decade of 80 to 100-hour work weeks, you'd probably pull a base salary of at least $1 million a year. Everyone knows Apple is one of the richest companies on earth, with hundreds of billions in revenue. You'd think they'd be paying a fortune in taxes, right? Yeah. No. Apple actually legally avoids billions of dollars in taxes by shifting its profits to Ireland, a country with much lower tax rates than the US. The legal loophole is called the double Irish with a Dutch sandwich. Not even joking. They transfer profits through Ireland, then the Netherlands, then back to Ireland, which somehow means they get to dodge almost all their tax liability in the United States. Eventually, governments caught on, and in 2016, the European Union ordered Apple to pay $14 billion in back taxes. What did Apple do? Got their elite team of corporate lawyers ready, fought the case, won, and never paid the full amount. You've probably seen the ads. Have you been injured in an accident? You may be entitled to financial compensation. Call us now on 1-300-I'm a scumbag. These are the lawyers that make huge money by suing companies for injuries they've inflicted on their clients. These could be anything from psychological damage, broken bones, wrongful deaths, any injury really. And unlike most lawyers who charge by the hour, these guys only get paid if they win or settle a case. Noble, right? Well, depends who you ask. Some personal injury lawyers genuinely do good work and help people get fairly compensated for their damages. Others will take any case that they think they can squeeze money out of. Their job essentially boils down to, prove that the client's injury was someone else's fault, and then negotiate the biggest payout possible. So this entails gathering all the info on the client's story, collecting official records and documentation to support the story, calculating the damages incurred by the client, and finally negotiating settlements with the opposition. Very rarely will personal injury lawyers have to go to court because the companies they're suing would much rather a hush-hush settlement that keeps their name out of the news and reduces the likelihood of a massive payout awarded by a judge and jury. This one's kind of funny, unless you're McDonald's. In 1992, a 79-year-old woman named Stella Liebeck ordered a coffee from McDonald's drive-thru. As she tried to open the lid to add sugar, the coffee spilled onto her lap. The coffee was so hot that it ended up giving her third-degree burns almost instantly. She had to undergo skin grafts and multiple surgeries and was hospitalized for 8 days and left permanently scarred. Poor Stella didn't even want to sue. She just wanted McDonald's to cover her medical bills, which were around $20,000. McDonald's offered her $800. So she sued, and the jury awarded her $2.7 million. Hell yeah, Stella. Most lawyers are chasing money, power, and status. Human rights lawyers, they chase justice. At least that's the idea. These are the lawyers who fight for the little guy. It's a pretty massive field, but their main areas of work include fighting for political prisoners, so defending people who have been wrongly arrested or silenced by governments, suing corporations for wrongdoing, maybe going after companies for violating workers' rights or destroying the environment or exploiting cheap labor. Then we've got war crime tribunals, which is holding dictators and military leaders accountable for their atrocities. And finally, defending free speech and civil liberties, so protecting people like journalists, activists, and whistleblowers. At the highest level, human rights lawyers work for organisations like the UN, Amnesty International, or the International Criminal Court, taking on cases that quite literally change history. How much do they make for this kind of work? Pretty much the same kind of deal as other areas of law. You work for the big dogs handling the massive international cases, you'll get paid really well. But if you're just working for a local non-profit or NGO, you'll probably make something similar to or slightly above average wage. This kind of work is meant to pay you in ways other than financial. You might have heard of Amal. She's George Clooney's wife, and she happens to be one of the most famous human rights lawyers in the world. She's done some incredible work, from representing WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to representing Armenia against those who claimed the Armenian genocide never occurred. Amal obviously isn't what most human rights lawyers are. Most are working behind the scenes, fighting legal battles pretty much no one will ever hear about, and making a fraction of what corporate lawyers will earn. But I'd argue you're doing something a hell of a lot more important than making money. Ever wonder how Disney still owns Mickey Mouse? Or how Apple sued Samsung over a rectangle and won? Or how Taylor Swift manages to trademark her own lyrics? Well, that's all thanks to IP lawyers, the people who protect ideas, brands, and inventions from being stolen. So what do IP lawyers actually do? There's 3 types of IP law. You've got copyright law, which is protecting books, movies, music, art, software, or anything creative. You've got patent law, which protects inventions, new tech, and scientific discoveries. And then you've got trademark law, which is protecting brands, logos, and slogans. So the job involves filing patents and trademarks, suing anyone who steals or copies ideas, defending companies who accidentally stole an idea, and fight over who actually owns an idea. And in some cases, these guys are pulling millions from a single lawsuit. In fact, IP lawyers are fairly well known for making the big bucks. Again, it comes back to who they represent. Who really needs to hire IP lawyers? Massive tech companies and massive entertainment companies looking to protect their stuff. And these guys pay millions. So how about that example I gave earlier about Apple suing Samsung? In 2011, Apple sued Samsung for $2.5 billion because Samsung's phones looked too much like an iPhone. They claimed Samsung had copied the shape of the iPhone, copied the grid layout of app icons, and copied the rounded corners. Yes, Apple did in fact try to patent rounded rectangles. Anyways, crazy enough, Apple actually won. Samsung were ordered to pay Apple over $1 billion. These guys are the government's attack dogs. So on one side of the courtroom, you've got the criminal defense lawyers trying to keep their clients out of trouble, and then on the other side, you've got the prosecutors trying to put the bad guys away. At least that's how they paint themselves. Heroes fighting for justice. And there's definitely some good guys fighting for the good of the world, but there's equally a bunch of power-hungry narcissists who care more about their conviction rate than the truth. For instance, as a prosecutor, Marla Harris's office fought against DNA testing for Kevin Cooper, a death row inmate who claimed he was wrongly convicted, which could have helped prove his innocence. Only after public backlash did she say, "I support DNA testing." Unbelievable. So, what are the prosecutors supposed to be doing? Well, their job is to convict people, bring forth the strongest case they possibly can and put the bad guys in prison. This involves reviewing police investigations, gathering evidence and interviewing witnesses, cutting plea deals, going to court and arguing in front of a jury, and recommending sentences. How much do they make? Not much. They work for the government, so their pay is pretty average. Entry level is definitely less than 6 figures. A senior prosecutor might be pulling 100 to 150k, and a district attorney probably pulls a little more than 200,000 a year. Now, I can't spend all video talking about all the different types of lawyers, so here's a little table summarizing the other main types of lawyers if you wanted to pause and have a read. Otherwise, we're moving on to the richest lawyers in the world. Let's start off with corporate lawyer Bill Newcomb, who has a net worth of around $850 million. He served as Microsoft's lead lawyer for 25 years, negotiating huge antitrust cases that kept Microsoft dominant. Then we've got Judge Judy, the Queen herself. She's worth around $480 million, making around $50 million a year for yelling at people on TV. Then we've got this guy Joe Jamail, aka the King of Torts, who won the largest personal injury settlement in history, a $10.5 billion lawsuit against Texaco in the 80s. He was smart and charged a percentage fee of the payout should he win. This meant that his net worth went up to around $1.7 billion. And finally, the famous Robert Shapiro, whose net worth is around $100 million and was part of the dream team that helped OJ walk free. So what do you guys think? Still want to be a lawyer? Or would you rather not drown yourself in the paperwork for the rest of your life? Let me know in the comments what you liked about the video and what career choice you'd like me to do in a video next. As always, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.